So yes, I am sitting here in my Bluey t-shirt, still rocking my Washington Commanders colors as my cat tries to say hello to me. And I wanted to keep my word because friends of mine that used to listen to the old podcast, the Nate Show podcast, would be aware of the fact that, and I mentioned it last episode on here, that there was stop and go. There were so many times that it just you know, I, again, I went into it. So if you want to hear all that, you can listen to the last episode on the feed here. Shameless plug, the NateShowNetwork.com. You can find it, or wherever you get your podcast for the most part. But I wanted to keep my word because originally I was going to put an episode out Saturday, and then some things got in the way. And make sure you see Bluey a little bit better there if you're watching on video. And then I got distracted with just the weekend and spent some really good quality time with some close friends, and was streaming for a little bit Saturday night and watching the Commanders. I want to point at the hat. It's a Nate Show hat. Yeah, doing all that. And so it was like I didn't want to just force out an episode. And I sit here close to midnight on Sunday night recording this, and I'm going to upload this in the morning, Monday morning, the 20th, as it'll be when I upload it. And I was sitting working on some stuff. I was doing some editing as far as like some design, some very basic design stuff, like this little Nate Show Network thing on the screen, and the Nate Show, always put the wrong way, logo, and figuring out how to make all that different stuff work. And if you were on the stream last night, first of all, thank you. And second of all, it was a disaster because I was an amateur and was playing audio that was coming through that shouldn't have been coming through, and then I wasn't. Anyway, it was just a total disaster because I was trying to force something that didn't need to be done. And I think, even though it's not on the screen, I think, especially if you're watching on the website, you can just see the logo for now. I think that the Nate book is good wordplay. It's a decent enough, design that I spent way too much time on because, again, I don't know what I'm doing there. But I'm trying to learn, and I'm going to talk about that in a second. Trying to learn how to do all these different things. I'll just say it now. Trying to learn how to do all these different things because I want, however amateur it is, when you stumble across something that is the Nate Show related, I want it to be obvious, for better or oftentimes worse, that there's no mistaking what that is. There's no mistaking, oh, Nate did that, or that's part of the Nate Show. That makes sense. It's not just a little logo, and I'm pointing the wrong way again. It's not just, any of that. It's I want it to be oddly specific to what I want to do. And I'm going to branch out and do different things and have different guests. And I'll talk about that before, and we'll cover that. That's ground that we'll cover going forward. But it was very important to me, as I was saying before, then I distracted myself, that get something up Monday morning. The video, this will go up on Tuesday on the site and on YouTube and everything, and that's cool. And there's a lot of fun stuff that I'm excited to be doing, this week and moving forward. But, I sat and I stared at the Nate Book logo, and I was looking at it, and I just went, even though I just said a second ago it was good for what it is. But, the enemy of great is good. And I looked at it and I thought, I don't like it. And I don't know that I, in good faith, would keep, doing something. Now, let me say this first before I go on, because you probably think you know where this is going, and I'm going to throw a curveball. So, because before, as I was mentioning, it was stop and go, and there was no consistency. There was no rhythm to be created. And that's why, like even the stream, I've realized at a certain point last night on Twitch that I was only streaming to the same people I was playing Fortnite with. So it was like, well, why even? I just turned the stream off. But I just want to get used to doing it because I want to create the consistency in that schedule and doing all that so that when these things do take off, I'm in that rhythm and I don't have to start it up, Just earlier, I was asked to fill in. So Monday evening, the 20th, asked to fill in doing some, music bingo. which I'm known to do in addition to doing trivia. And it's like, that's great. But it's like there was a time that would have, not long ago, that would have scared me. Like, oh, I got to fill it. I don't even know what to do. Now I know what to do. So I just want to become proficient in these things. I may never be a master at, I'm never going to be as good of a graphic designer as my dear friend Nathan. I'm never going to be as good of a streamer as my other friend Nathan. I may never reach those levels, but and that's fine. Like, I just want to get good at what it is specifically that I'm doing. And so I say all that, and I'm going somewhere with this because I was talking about the Nate Book logo. I may still use that for something. I may still use that for a segment or something, but that's not going to be the name of this podcast anymore. And so the seeds were kind of planted last episode when I was saying this isn't actually an official episode. And so this one here, also, for what it's worth, is not, specifically a podcast episode. And let me explain what I mean by that. So there's no intro. There's no music. I have some new music for a theme that I really like. And so I'm going to have to do some editing and do a voiceover and do all that. Excuse me. But as of right now, my cat just ran down the stairs. As of right now, this is just a speaking into the mic, looking right into the camera, even though I pass glances at the OBS just to make sure I still look okay with my mismatching red hat and bluey t-shirt, which I would have never worn this shirt yesterday because it's almost Detroit Lions colors, and I didn't want any part of, that sports superstition came back. And that's what this quote-unquote episode that's not an episode is going to be. Because as I'm recording this, I have to be up in 5 hours to get ready for work, and I don't want to rush this. But at the same time, this is going to set an expectation for what we're doing next. So here's what we're doing next, and I'm going to make sure I clip this and put this on the socials and stuff so that it exists as a less than perfect setup for what we're going to do next. So, and again, I'm aware, as I was mentioning to start, that all the stop and go, I would say what was going to happen next or promise things I was going to work on, and they never came to fruition. So you can take all this with a giant pillar of salt if you want to. That's fine. But the cat's just running back and forth. The zoomies are going. So going forward, let's get the most important part of this out of the way. The name. Because the Nate Book podcast, while it was cute and funny for 2 episodes that aren't episodes, what I'm going to do going forward is, why shouldn't I deny my true nature? I made these hats a long time ago. There are 4 The Nate Show hats in existence in the world. Well, I don't know that because someone else may have made one. I don't know. But specifically that I know of, there are 4. And it's the name, it's the logo. I'm pointing both directions, so either way you see, the logo, the name, all of it. I've been excited about it from the jump. And then it was me, and I'm the reason that it didn't work out, which I could apply to a lot of areas. But back in 2016, when this idea first came to fruition, when I created a Facebook page called The Nate Show, didn't know what to do. The first profile photo of that was Ralphus, which you can look that up. He accompanied Chris Jericho to the ring back in WCW. All that is great, whatever. And then what all this turned into was just a jumbled mess of chaos, kind of like all my sentences that I'm trying to string together here. But the point is the Nate Show has always been a good idea. The Nate Show as an idea itself has always been a good one. The execution, and frankly, who I've been as a person, was not on par with how good the idea and all that was. I was listening. One of the reasons I'm so late getting this uploaded is I spent the last couple hours while I was editing stuff listening to old episodes that I still have saved on a hard drive, and I was like, these are not as bad as I remember them doing. It's that thing where your brain, especially if you're someone like me, will tell you, man, you got to get away from the Nate Show podcast name. And that's the whole thing, was like, I wanted to create, I was doing, there have been two or three different iterations since of, okay, we're going to do something different. I've posted logos and designs I've done in the past of like, okay, here's a new idea. And then I don't execute that. Here's a new idea. And you, to be fair, again, you can file this under that. You can file this under another failed experiment. And I'm cool with that. But the longer I looked at that logo, the longer I thought about, I was working on putting a little tiny intro together for it. And I was like, the Nate Book podcast just doesn't work. So let's start simple. And again, that idea may be used in the future, but it exists, as I heard John Mayer say once, it exists a little bit beyond my taste right now, and that's fine. Let's go back to basics. Let's make this simple. The Nate Show podcast. Let's just make it simple. That's what we're doing from here on out. There are a ton of things that this could morph into, but everything is going to be housed. The main podcast is going to be the Nate Show podcast, because that's as simple as I can think to make it. I mean, you've already got, there's the Nate Show logo, the Nate Show network on the screen. But way beyond that, it's easier to do. And yes, and these are not available to the public just yet. The Nate Show stickers, like, the branding's there. Why I don't need to create a bunch of other branding whenever I haven't done anything for that branding. For at least 3 people, the Nate Show is a recognizable thing, and the Discord voice chat, the Discord chats that I'm in, the Nate Show is a recognizable. Now I feel like Frank Lucas in American Gangster, and it's like, I know it's not that level, but it's a brand, like Pepsi. That's a brand name. I stand behind it. I guarantee it. They know that. Anyway, so it's a great movie. But I'm excited to do this. And I mentioned in the last episode just doing things for the love. And I was like, I don't love the Nate book. I don't love the Notebook. So why connote that when I don't even love that? Some of those old episodes, some of the old stuff I used to do, which is not available, but I did mention last time, especially listening through some of the stuff again this evening, I was excited because I was like, some of this stuff's still usable. Like, some of this stuff I can do like a throwback episode, or you take clips and throw to them. I was like, hey, by the way, here's a thing I did in 2018 on whatever, and throw to that, and that be some content. And some of that stuff holds up a lot better because unless it was sports stuff, I wasn't doing content that was, for the most part, that was specific to the time. There were some pop culture relevant things in there, and there were some news stories in there, but for the most part, I was doing stuff that you could have, that was kind of the idea too, was stuff that you could have put, as a human interest thing, or just something you might be, I mentioned it before, like there's where do hoodies come from? That was in the old intro. Me posing the question, where do hoodies come from? That may be part of this, branding going forward, as far as it being on the new intro. But that episode and the person I recorded it with will not be. But anyway, so, there's a lot of stuff. I'm just going to leave that alone. There's a lot of stuff that I'm excited to bring back, but there's a lot of stuff that I'm looking for the future, and I'm going to use this opportunity to segue here in just a moment. But I just, as a quick reminder before I do, the Nate Show podcast, to me, I'm just going to keep saying it until it's real, if it's not already, is a good idea. It's the right idea. It was the right idea nearly a decade ago, and all the dabbling I've done with it and then walking away from it, for a multitude of reasons. It's neither here nor there at this point. We're here. It's 2025. It's time to work on some new things and making what's old new again. But at the same time, it's just, I've talked about doing a a rebrand, a relaunch before and never followed through with it. I will just say that we're gonna we're gonna mix the old and new together. It's gonna feel, for those few of you that were a fan of the old stuff, you're gonna like the direction this goes. Those of you that could not possibly care less, first of all, you're already not listening anymore or watching anymore. You've already tuned this out, so I'm probably not talking to you anyway. But if you did still make it through the cracks there and you don't care and whatever, that's cool. I'm glad to have you, because again, all of this is, I'm doing this for the love right now. Like, I'd love to grow this into some big things, but doing it for the love, as I mentioned last episode, is very important to me. So I'm going to segue and also close with a topic that I've been wanting to talk about. Now, I'll be able to talk about it more depending on the result of something next week. So this will be sort of a pre-ramble to that. But speaking of doing things for the love, it's well documented, if you're a friend of mine, that my love of sports has somewhat diminished over the last couple years. And a lot of that, well, to be fair, a lot of that wasn't just the thing that happened with Florida State football. It goes back to a good thing, because 2016, and I've mentioned the thing before about how much the 2016 Cubs meant to me, but I say that to say that's the peak for me, because I'll never feel, I doubt I'll ever feel the way about anything sports related that I felt about that. And then, frankly, the passing of Kobe Bryant, that whole thing was sort of just a gut punch. And it was like that, mixed with, even though basketball is like the love of my life, I don't love that the way that I used to. And so it becomes like, well, I mean, and there's a few reasons for that, but all that to say, it was like I've almost completely emotionally disconnected from caring about sports. And of course, you can make the joke like Florida State went 2-10 this past season, so it's like, of course, like I would not care anymore. But you look at different things, and it's like the Florida State basketball, for example, right before the pandemic hit, had just won the ACC. They were the best team in the country, and shut down. No NCAA tournament. And then after that, they've been bad since. Just been bad. It's a whole new wave anyway in college basketball. And if you hear me like scream or yell, it's because I'm getting bit by a cat. So, and then, this will ultimately end up is with the Commanders stuff. But before I get to that, I started to try to, it's like, okay, let me see if I can rekindle some of this stuff. And let me branch out a little bit. So I started getting into hockey. And I was like, well, I don't much care for the Nashville Predators. I don't, even though, because being in Tennessee, frankly, I just don't care about Nashville. I just, as cities go, like, I know people, speaking of sports, like people, they're overrated. I just think Nashville as a city is just like, I just don't get it. But it's also not my scene. Like, I don't like country music that much, nor do I like alcohol that much. So it's like, anyway, so there's that. And then it's like, okay, well, there's not really any teams local. And like, let me find. So I remember when I was a kid, I remember seeing a Florida Panthers jersey. I remember there's a guy in the Johnson City Mall here in Tennessee, if you're not from here. And it was that retro with the big panther like coming towards you. And I was like, that's dope. And just hockey jerseys in general, sweaters are dope to me, because it's like that. You get that long sleeve. I love a good long sleeve. It's like, it's comfy and it just looks cool. But, I started looking around. I was like, okay, I could become a fan of the Panthers. And this was like 3 years ago. So I'm like, okay, well, and I was in a Marshall's one day, and at the checkout, for no reason, they had like these tumblers of the Minnesota Wild hockey team. So I was like, okay, so that's a contender. Let's throw them in there. And then, just being frank here, was low-key spending time with a young woman that was from the Calgary area. So I was like, hey, the Calgary Flames jerseys are pretty dope too. So let's throw those in the mix. So those were like kind of the three. And then being a fan of Chicago sports teams, I threw the Blackhawks in there as just sort of whatever. Because I was like, well, that makes sense because, Florida State Seminoles, Washington used to be the Redskins. I know they don't call them that anymore. And then I was like, okay, Blackhawks. So it's like you got this Native American type thing that is heavy on a specific side of my family. So I was like, okay, well that would be natural. So Chicago, but anyway, so the Panthers end up winning that particular battle, and then just so happens I know I'm a bandwagon guy, but it was like it just so happened they got good right after that. Had always been the team that was like, and I used to keep up with them because listening to the Levitard show based in Miami, they would always make the joke that no matter what time of the season it was, the Panthers were always in ninth place and 5 points back. So it was like that was the running joke. And then right after this, they got pretty good. I believe won the President's Cup, so like had the best record in the National Hockey League, and then lost. I believe it was the second round to Tampa Bay. It was 2022. And then in 2023 made the Stanley Cup final as an 8 seed. We're down 3-1 to the Boston Bruins, so anytime Boston loses, it's funny. So that was perfect. And then they go on to the finals, which is crazy. And that was like that random, I know I'm off topic and I'll wrap up soon, but like that was that random year that Miami took over because it was like they had the Panthers in the finals, the Miami Heat, I think also was like a 7 or 8 seed in the finals. They had Miami and Florida Atlantic in the Final Four in college basketball, and so they were dominant. It seemed like, and I didn't win a title in any of those, but that's okay. So yeah, the Panthers lost to it was the Vegas. I think it was the Vegas Golden Knights 2 years ago, so 2023, and then this past season won the Stanley Cup, and it was like it didn't quite feel like the 2016 Cubs because I've only invested in 3 years, but I always feel like the timing of things is funny for me because it's like, was this past summer was going through some stuff emotionally and just reliving some stuff that I thought I was long past, and being able to latch on to a sports team and watch them, win, and not just win, go up 3-0 in the Stanley Cup Finals and then lose 3 straight, so that you have that do or die Game 7 and all the anxiety, all the back and forth, and hockey, and to me a lesser extent soccer, is like this where like it's so low scoring that every play, like every moment matters. Like anything could change the entire game, the entire matchup. So you have to be like the anxiety's always there, which is my favorite thing about sports. I was at the ACC championship recently, Clemson and SMU, and I was telling the friend I was with, I was like, hey, like we were in the Clemson section, and I said, because they had been winning the whole game fairly easily, and then it started to slowly get tight late in the game. And I said, this is what you live for as a sports fan. This when you can feel the dynamics, like especially when you're in the arena, you can feel the nervous energy. And one more thing, and I'll get back on topic. I remember it was the first time I ever really noticed this in 2016. Being at the Tennessee Appalachian State game to kick off the season at Tennessee at Neyland Stadium. Everyone was excited. And there was, I think, App State had gone 4 and out. And so they're going to punt, or 3 and out. They're going to punt. And they punted, and Tennessee muffed the punt, and App State got it back. And it was like that. Like from there, all that fever pitch, that noise, the excitement, top 10 team to start a new season, it all came down. It was, you could feel the entire game from there. Nerves. App State took a 13-3 lead into the fourth quarter. So that whole thing, and if App State had managed the clock better on their final drive, they'd have won the game. The Josh Dobbs fumble for Tennessee at the goal line, they got it back and scored, but it was like all of it just was like just chaotic, and that's what you live for. And so for the Panthers to then win in Game 7, and for me to sort of feel some of the catharsis of, it's like, okay, I'm allowed to breathe again and enjoy sports a little bit again, but have still been holding back. And again, made it through most of the college football season without um, any real emotional investment in it, and had disconnected from the NFL over the years. The timing of that was funny because the time that like I really kind of gave up on the NFL, and these things aren't related, and I need to preface it by saying that. But it was around the time that all the Colin Kaepernick stuff was going around because it was like it wasn't that I was taking a side. I found it all annoying. And it was like the first time I truly realized that like, oh, sports aren't just sports anymore. It's not about your favorite teams and favorite players. It's there's this whole, you know, and you always kind of knew that, but there's this whole underbelly of like political BS, and all this stuff, and it's like, ugh. And then it didn't help that then the Washington Redskins, now the Commanders, were horribly mismanaged by a terrible owner. And it was always something, and even just the sports aspect of it had been bad for a while at that point. The rookie year of RG3 and having Kirk Cousins as the backup, that was hopeful, but then RG3 getting hurt and was never the same. It was like, so you had that glimmer of hope and then it's gone, which is usually in sports worse than just never having hope. And then all that with all of the chaos in the front office and Daniel Snyder, and it was just like, I don't want to do this anymore. And I'm already disinterested in the NFL, so I don't want to do this. And so a couple of years ago, I was just like, okay, I don't care. Like the thing is though, when football's on and I see now the Commanders playing, and this is where I'm getting to here, I would be like, especially if it was a late game, it's like a fourth quarter, and it's a 7-point game or something, and I'm like, oh, I have a chance. Like I would still find myself like on instinct getting into it. So I never fully went away, if we're being honest. And then to start this past season, or before, I guess I should say, they completely changed everything as a franchise. New ownership group, new everything, new coach, drafted Jaden Daniels out of LSU, and all this stuff. So I started looking, and I was like, okay, I can feel comfortable rooting for this team because it's not the same, as the BS we were just dealing with, like with the ownership and stuff. And it was like, as my filler team, I'll just be honest, I'd kind of picked up the Chicago Bears just because whatever. And then again, it's that whole Chicago sports thing that I love. And the turning point for me was watching the end of the Bears Commanders game this past season, because if that's the one that, if you're a football fan, you remember the Bears are 4-2 going into that game, and on that final play, the Commanders complete that Hail Mary. But if you remember, the Bears corner, was it Stevenson, was standing in the corner, flexing, doing that whole thing, and ended up ironically being the one that tipped the ball backwards on the Hail Mary to the Commanders receiver that was able to score the game-winning touchdown. And the Bears lost every game after that except for the final game of the season, which I believe the Packers were resting their starters, which paid off. And then the Commanders continued being really good. But that was like when I first noticed, I was like, oh, this Commanders team like there's some different energy here than what there's been in a while. There's something about this, something going on here. They're up to something. And so it's been really fun to watch this team and this franchise grow and do everything already, and then beat, the best team in the NFC, the Detroit Lions, yesterday. And now going, as I record this, they're playing 3:00 next Sunday at Philadelphia for a chance to go to the Super Bowl. And it's like, dude, like that's way more than I could have expected. But now that we're here, and especially, frankly, now that it's Philly, I'm like, I'm fully on board. And again, going back to the Panthers thing, you can hear and look at all that and go, yeah, that's bandwagon behavior. And you're not necessarily wrong. I can't really, there's not much of an argument that I can make. Sorry, I was like, got distracted. I wasn't sure my foot was touching. But yeah, like it's been good to be back. And I don't think that sports are a thing. I still, at the end of the day, don't think they're a thing to be taken super seriously. But much like I was saying last week with music, it's like when you can attach to a team or a fan base, and you can, you know, use that as sort of an outlet to things going on in your real life, your personal life. Because when good things, and bad things frankly too, but like when good things happen in sports, especially when it involves quote unquote your team, you associate that with like where you were at in your life at that point. Because as much as the 2016 Cubs World Series win meant as a Cubs fan, it meant way more to me just being a human being. The Florida Panthers, like I said, I'm 3 years in with them. It's not like I have a lifetime of investment. Although, like I said, I like that jersey and I've followed their team for years. Like, like, kind of as like a third party. But like, to be able to go, oh yeah, I was going through this last summer, and then this made me feel a little bit better about it. And that's one of the cool things. But the flip side is also true, because you can, you know, I was mentioning, and I'll wrap up with this. I was mentioning like spending time with friends. You know, we went out to eat, went to a birthday party, went out to eat yesterday evening, and you know, the waitress, you know, and there were kids there too, so it's like I was trying to figure out, and I'm just there, you know, doing my thing. It's just me as always, you know, just hanging out. And you know, I was making the joke because I'd pointed at the screen or something. I was like, "Who are you rooting for?" Whatever, what we were talking about. And then she's like, "Oh no, I don't really care about sports." And I stopped her and I was like, "You're so much better off. Like the fact that you've not, you know, chosen a team at 7 years old and decided to make them, like, let them make you angry your whole life. You know, I think that if you're someone that is not into sports, I do think that part of it is like you're better off without that negativity in your life. But I still stand by. It's nice when you go through things, or even when things are good. You know, if things are good and your team wins, it's like okay, whatever. But I guess it's a matter of perspective. But I say all that to say, in a self-serving manner, because this is sort of like the irony here, and I'm not making a political statement, but the irony is like I'm recording this on like the last, literally the final hours of Joe Biden being president, and I'm uploading this like the morning of Trump being inaugurated. And again, I'm not here to talk about politics. I'm only saying this to say this is already the Nate Book podcast. This is already the lame duck, because this I'll still leave it on the feed, but it's the last, like we're gonna have this again. It's gonna be the Nate Show podcast. There's gonna be an intro. There's gonna be a little bit better, slightly better production value that will get better as we go. I'm doing the best with what I got at the moment. But and then there's a ton of stuff I'm gonna do. I'm gonna keep doing the streaming. I'm gonna keep doing all kinds of stuff. But you know, I say all that to say, go Commanders. If you're looking for a sports team to root for and you don't care, feel free to join me. Love to have you. You hop on the train with me, and if not, that's cool too. So, going forward, I want to say hello and goodbye to the Nate Book podcast. I want to say hello and everything. I don't know. Say hello to the Nate Show podcast again. It's good to be back. It's good to be yapping again into a microphone. Thank you for those of you that have somehow made it through these two non-episodes. You're a trooper. It's going to hit a little different. It's going to be me talking, but it's going to hit different going forward. So next Monday, stay tuned, especially, well, no matter what happens with the Commanders-Eagles game, I will have something to talk about, that's for sure, next Monday. I'll be recording next Sunday evening directly after the game. I'll probably go live on Twitch, so we may end up just doing that. That idea just came to me, and I think it's a good one. So after the ball game, next Sunday, the 27th, probably from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m., Eastern Standard Time, I will be live reacting, unless the game's still going on, live reacting Commanders Eagles, and we'll just use that as a as sort of a springboard. And I may go ahead and just do a live episode of the Nate Show podcast while I'm there. So, fun idea that just came to me. It's an idea that I actually had a couple days ago. I thought the idea of a live podcast would be fun, but we're going to do it. So, the Nate Book podcast, we opened the Nate Book. I'll see if I had a notebook near me for visual effect, but it don't matter. Last week, we're closing it this week. It's been a great run, like LeVar Ball, undefeated, never lost. But hope to have you back for the Nate Show podcast. If not, I get it.